So our fourth issue that we look into is titled Who is Tracking You? And basically goes into a lot of data tracking and locational tracking, mainly just like privacy concerns from consumers versus like companies and social media sites and whatnot. One quote that I wrote down that sort of defines tracking in the reading comes from the Electronic Frontier Foundation, or EFF. And it says, tracking is the retention of information that can be used to connect records of a person's actions or reading habits across space, cyberspace, or time. Now, the book separates tracking into two broad categories known as behavioral tracking, where information is accumulated about what you do, such as like visiting websites, online shopping, and who you communicate with online. And then the second category is locational tracking, where your physical location is recorded, such as your address, where you live, where you work, when and where you shop, and the route like you take to school or other places. Now, I believe the book talks about how technology tracking was in the spotlight back in 2011 when Pete Warden and Alasdair Allen, I'm sorry if I pronounced that wrong, discovered that iPhones were collecting and storing date-stamped information that triangulates the phone's location. And from this, a simple application could then be used, which was known as the iPhone tracker. Now, this could receive this data and just display it on a map. And it shows where people were going when their data was used. Now, a lot of privacy advocates explained that government agencies, even as far as like disgruntled spouses and parents, as well as criminals, could just easily trace a person's whereabouts. I wrote down this one quote from the reading, and it says, tracking is controversial, especially when it occurs without the consent or control of the trackee. And following this, a lot of advocates for privacy argue that there needs to be much more strict protocols for collecting, using, storing, and distributing location information. But on the other hand of this argument, a lot of law enforcement officials would like to explore the ways location tracking can be used in order to track criminals and prevent terrorism. So it's kind of a weird situation. I also wrote down that, because I believe the book went into this just in one sentence, how a lot of commercial interest in tracking technology is just at an all-time high, especially when it comes to marketing and advertising. And I think I followed this summary up by writing, these conflicting interests on location tracking will determine if tracking can be implemented in a way that the rights and privacy of individuals are protected. Now, we were also expected to read the TiC, which was titled Fashion Industry. Overall, this reading goes into fashion and its newer inclusion with technology. Now, it does go into some just like company stuff from a wider scale, such as RFID tags being sewn into clothing or the labels on the clothing, which are then used from the company as a whole or from the brand to track products as they leave the manufacturing plant through the distribution chain until it gets to the retailer. And I believe it mentioned that if it's in the tag, a lot of these tags will then say like remove after purchase or something like that. And on top of this, I think I wrote that apart from just clothing, a lot of tech has just been brought into a lot of these stores. Some retail stores such as Selfridges and Bloomingdale's now have body scanning pods to produce three-dimensional virtual models of customers. Now, this will allow customers to find the perfect pair of jeans online. I'm assuming just any article of clothing that you're looking for to help with sizing. It says to help purchase things online or in person without the constant fitting room visit. Some other random projects that I wrote down because I thought they were sort of notable on this idea include the jacket from Scotty Vest, which allows individuals to connect their devices to a personal area network that is wired inside the jacket, or Pauline Van Dongen, her wearable solar clothing that incorporates traditional fabrics with high technology solar cells that are then hidden inside of the article of clothing. Now, to sum this up, I wrote, with the inclusion of technology, this has led fashion into both very innovative and creative trends, but I also feel as if this threatens privacy, especially with the current issue on location tracking, especially among online services and social media. At the end of my notes, I write, where is the limit in technology inclusions? Will future tech clothing also be used to track a consumer's every move? Just food for thought, I suppose. To get into the try it questions, number one asks us to leave our location services on for a day and to track our activities. And so I actually always have my location services on, but more for the Find My iPhone feature from Find My Friends, I suppose. Now, I share my location with my family, specifically my parents and my boyfriend. Now, this isn't so much because I don't trust anyone on where they go or they don't trust me, but it has just sort of become a safety backup. I won't speak for anyone else, but for me, I like to use it to just, if I know my parents are going to be out late, I'm really paranoid, I just like to double check that they do make it home safely. And same goes with my boyfriend. This is more notably when he was working a different job than he is currently, and he was working really late shifts. I like to double check that he was safe at home when he needed to be, like if I woke up during the night and I just thought of it. Again, it's just more paranoia of someone getting into an accident and not being able to contact anyone, or not making it home versus any sort of mistrust. Now, apart from this, we were asked to go into our activities for one day, and honestly, this week I've been home more often than not, and if I did go anywhere, it was to run a few errands for the house. So to move on to question 2, we are asked, what are the similarities and differences between do not track and do not call? So they did give they gave 2 websites, the EFF.org or Wikipedia. So I went to both, and EFF.org defines do not track as a way to keep users' online behavior from being followed across the internet by behavioral advertisers, analytic companies, or social media sites, excuse me. Whereas Wikipedia, specifically their do not track legislation article, states do not track legislation protects users' right to choose whether or not they want to be tracked by third-party websites. It is often called the online version of do not call. So after this, I did in fact just end up Googling do not track versus do not call, and I found this one website, it was innovationfiles.org, and their article, repeat after me, do not track is not do not call. Basically it runs down that the only similarity between these two are the name. Like it's just a common name between both of them. But more notably, the differences are that do not call is more typically used for phone services, a telephone line, whereas do not track is more for online use, the internet and whatnot. So some of the differences that it lists are how advertising does not pay for free content over the phone, but it does over the internet. The example given on the article states that the telephone system would continue to work even if telemarketing was gone, whereas the internet would not work without advertising, which is sort of interesting. Another difference is how telemarketing calls are nearly an annoying interruption for many people, whereas targeted web advertisements are just sort of the norm. Number 3 asks us to define GPS, cell tower triangulation, and WPS. So I know it tells us to go and use Wikipedia or other online resources. I believe I wrote it down, safetracks.in. So I wrote down for first GPS, which is, its full name is Global Positioning System, which is then shortened to GPS, is a satellite-based navigation system made of 27 satellites. GPS devices and smartphones have receivers built into them. If the receiver itself connects with at least 3 satellites, its 2-dimensional position can be identified, whereas if 4 or more satellites are connected to, the 3-dimensional position can then be determined. In order to find the exact location, I believe the receiver identifies its distance from each connected satellite, and through mathematical triangulation, the location is then found. Moving on, cell tower triangulation is more just from your cell phone to its cell tower. Cell phone signals need to be picked up by 3 or more cell towers for triangulation to work through this method. In order to estimate the location of the phone, the distance from the 3 cell towers are identified. So WPS, its full name is Wi-Fi positioning, which is then shortened, works through a background location service on phones that constantly searches for Wi-Fi access points. The service also then sends Wi-Fi addresses and its identified location from either GPS or cell tower triangulation to the respective servers and is then stored in databases. So to move on to number 4, we were asked, think about the information that you post on your social networking and media sharing sites. How might this information be used to determine your location or track your movements? So I wrote down that a lot of news has come out in recent months about social media, specifically under Meta, or, well, originally Facebook, but I believe they just recently switched to Meta. Meta's umbrella, notably Facebook and Instagram, have been known to be tracking your whereabouts even when the app is fully closed on your device. I did look at, I think for this information, I looked at a 2019 article titled "Facebook Defends Tracking Your Every Move, Even If the App Isn't On." Now this was found on usatoday.com, where I believe they interviewed engineering director Paul McDonald, in which he sort of excuses this idea by stating that location tracking helps improve ads and keeps you and the Facebook community safe. But later in the article, it's written that McDonald freely admitted that even if you turn off your location services, Facebook can still grab your data. To combat this, a lot of privacy experts have responded that if you don't want to be tracked but still do want to use Facebook, but just don't use the app, instead sign on to your phone's browser, such as Safari, or if you use a separate like Google Chrome on your phone or whatnot, and use that instead of downloading the app itself. Now to move into the what do you think critical questions, the first one asks, do you worry about behavioral tracking based on your internet use? Overall, I don't really worry about it. I kind of find it a little comedic sometimes. A little bit ago, my cat had a food shortage at the local PetSmart that I go to, so I was searching online for prices and where to order it from, only to be met with ads upon ads with cat products and cat food, cat treats, which I was just sort of annoyed with because my cat actually has an allergy and needs a prescription, so things that, like some treats that could be good may not be good for her, which I know isn't, they don't know that, but it was just a little annoying to be stuck with just food advertisements, even if I was just on Instagram for a moment. I wrote here, it sometimes can be annoying. Sometimes if I just research into a product out of curiosity, I'm then stuck with these ads from companies or about similar products from either the company or similar companies for just like a week or more. In all honesty, this only really becomes a problem on like my iPad and my phone, because if I'm ever on Google Chrome on my laptop or my computer, I just have an ad block going, more out of convenience for myself if I'm watching YouTube, which I know isn't that good if I want to support a creator, but it's just less of a headache, to be honest, if I have something in the background. Number 2 asks, do you have a device that can track your physical location? Yeah, like I mentioned earlier, my phone's location is always being sent to whoever I've shared it with. Now, I don't really mind this. I mean, in hindsight, I know that it's not just my family members getting this information. I don't doubt that Apple, or even like any social media apps that I have downloaded on my phone currently, are just using this to some sort of, in some way for their own advantage. I don't know. I'd rather have my family's peace of mind to make sure that I'm safe and to make sure they're safe, rather than the headache of if Apple's tracking my every move. At that point, what they really do, besides just put it in their database, I suppose, they'll just know that I've been home a lot. So, sorry, moving on. Number 3, do you support efforts to institute do not track? I wrote, to a point, I do. I feel like measures should be taken by social media or other online services to allow consumers to decide whether or not they can be tracked or want to be tracked. I feel like the option should still be given to users, and on top of this, if a user does not want to be tracked, it should be ensured that there is nothing shady going on in like their phone or their laptop or their tablet's background processes to secretly snag data even when it was denied in the first place. I think that's where a lot of the issue comes from for me. If you're given this sort of fake option of deciding whether or not you want your information to be taken by a company or from social media, like if you deny it and then they continue to still grab it just under a bit more of a shady, hidden way, I feel if a consumer just doesn't really have an issue with it, then that should be fine. I don't know. It's a little weird. I basically just I feel like if it cuts to a point that social media wants to use your location, it should really just be up to the consumer to decide whether or not they actually want it to be used, taken, written down, saved, or or not, basically. So thank you. I know this was a little long. I'm sorry, my videos have been a little long. Again, I'm sorry. I'm curious on everyone else's responses to this issue. Thank you. Have a good day.